Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today is going to be a fun one, and I am going to start off very basic with some techniques that you may have seen, and then we are going to get a little more exciting with this. Then I'm going to turn these all into some finished cards, and so there are several cards at the end that you'll see how I went about making them, and we'll move through those relatively quickly, but just so it gives you some ideas. Now, we are going to be doing some ink swiping today. Now, I don't really have a better name for it, and I guess that's just, one way to put it. It's the obvious way, but you just need some very simple materials to be able to do this. I am just using normal cardstock today, definitely not watercolor cardstock. Then I have an acrylic block to put some inks on. I have a gift card or a hotel card or an expired credit card or something like that. And then I have some rubber bands just to make life easy. Now I'm going to be using re-inkers for this technique today. I'm using mainly the Simon Hurley re-inkers just because these are so vivid and so bright. I really do love his color range. And his inks, so I will be using these primarily today, but absolutely give it a go. No matter whether you've got dye inks, pigment inks, whether you've got hybrid inks, whether you've got oxides, anything, just give it a go. Now, I am going to be using baby wipes for this today, so what I tend to do to get the most out of them, I fold these into kind of quarters and then I snip them in half so that I can get two separate uses completely out of the one baby wipe. That's just what I need, but I suspect that honestly a cloth, a damp cloth, a cloth with some water on it, may do a very similar thing. So have a little bit of a play around. Then I just use an elastic band or a rubber band to secure it to my little hotel card here. And obviously, as you can see, there's lots of different ways to do this. You could just use a ruler, a stiff piece of plastic, cut off piece of an ice cream lid. I don't know, lots of different ways that you could go about making this part happen. But this is just what I've got. Then I'm going to put down 3 different inks. Again, there are so many ways out there to do this technique, kind of the first part of it. So definitely do not let this part limit you. So the first part, I'm just going to show you how this goes. So obviously you can apply them directly to the baby wipe. I find I get the best application and sometimes the most even application just by putting them onto an acrylic block first. Now, if you find that your baby wipe or your cloth is a little bit dry, spritz a little bit of water. That is one really good thing about using a water reactive ink, so like most dye inks. And then the world is really your oyster. So we are going to start off very simple. I mean, the techniques that you can create with just dabbing them here and making some lines. Obviously, you can swipe in all sorts of directions. You can get fancy with it. You can do squiggles, you can do certain waves, you can do all sorts of lines. You can turn it around so you'd like to repeat the pattern or double the pattern. I mean, remember that it's okay to leave white space or blank space, that's for sure as well. If you want to change colors, I tend to just change the little piece of baby wipe. I always put the old one to the side because sometimes I find I'll come back and want to do very similar colors and I can reuse it if not exactly the same colors. Or it does look kind of fun if you go over with new colors and kind of create these new fusions. I had a lot of fun playing with that as well, I'm not going to lie. Now, this one here, I have kept the colors ever so slightly more separate so that there is going to be space in between. So you don't have to have them touching as well. So that's another option. And these here, they're so simple, but they do create very cool cards. Now, you can either do a part where you want to leave some white space, or you can end up covering your entire card front as well. You can go over these time and time again, so it's sort of the darkness that you would like it to be. For this one here, I start off not too heavy-handed. I could have stopped here and just done sort of nice little stripes, but I got pretty excited with where we were going, and then I sort of decided to fill it in a little bit more. You just move the card, this way an inch or two, and this way, well, not an inch or two, but a millimeter or two each way, and you sort of get a more filled in stripe there. So that looks good. Okay, now we're going to move away a little bit from sort of lines, and actually you can create all sorts of gorgeous circles just by turning it around, and I just keep it attached. Doesn't matter if you take your hand off the paper a couple of times, you just keep starting again, and the ink is going to dry. Remember, at the moment it's really, really wet when we're first popping it on, so we can definitely smooth things out, and it will all even out. Most dye inks even out a little bit when they dry, at least. Some take quite a bit of time to even out as well, and you can add all sorts of little gorgeous circles as well. And then at this point, I was almost moving on until I remembered that I hadn't done any sort of gingham sort of patterns. So I thought while I was at it and while I had this color, I thought I would do a couple of those as well, just so that I can kind of have those in my stash. I did a whole lot of these and I had a whole lot of fun. I almost had sort of, a whole day in between, being a mum and feeding everybody and all the good things, because it is school holidays. The kids came in and did some to the side of me. They sort of came and went as they wanted to. My bedroom was an absolute, there was just pieces of paper cut and chopped all over the floor. Everybody had an absolute ball, and I was having a great time too. So the kids were able to do this technique. They were absolutely loving it. So here again, you can choose whether you want to overlap. You can choose whether you want to have gaps. You can choose all the good things, but I was having an absolute ball. Now at this point, these are all great and all really fun, but I want to show you a couple more techniques that are kind of taking it to the next level. So don't forget that these make gorgeous petals. Now don't get me wrong, I am no real artist. I don't have too much talent in that category, but I can make these petals, and I think this looks really pretty. It looks really lovely popping the colors together. So there is actually a yellowish color, and then a light pink, and then a dark pink on my little thing at the moment. So now that I've got one in the middle, I thought I would try some sort of different layouts, and this might create a whole card front as well. It might be a fun option. And then I was thinking about how I could do the leaves here as well. I kind of wanted to do some masking before I did that, but I might try that as well. Without the masking, because that seems like a lot of effort. All of the petals are going to be different sizes, and they don't have to be absolutely perfect. I'm missing a wee spot there, and so I decided to come back in and get that later on. And then this one, I'm going to have 3 sort of flowers, just changing up the look. And then you can go and change the colors as well and make all sorts of card fronts like this. I swear this is very, very addictive. You're going to, once you start, it's kind of a keep going sort of scenario. And so once I had done that, I had a right play, and then this was sort of the end up of, I will tell the truth and say this was about a third of the way through. So let's go ahead and turn these into some cards. So I'm going to take this very, very simple swipe. In fact, I think this was the very first one that I did. I have got the ModaScrap. This is the framed rectangles. This one's popular and keeps selling out, but at the moment it's definitely in stock. As per usual, I have everything listed down below in case you're interested in checking it out. But I've used this set of rectangles many times. The largest one here is just a fraction smaller than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it just adds the most beautiful detail if you are doing a simple, gorgeous card. Now I have the happy birthday to you from Fawn. They also have happy birthday stacked really nicely as well, if you don't want the to you down the bottom. But what I'm going to do is stack this. So I put some mint tape on the back, give it a bit of a press, and that way I can pull out the die, and everything is going to stay in place. So all of the little gaps are going to stay in place, and then all of the letters are going to stay in place too. So I just give them a little poke with a pokey tool through the die, and they'll all stay there because the mint tape on the back is like a low tack tape. So you can see all the little bits and bobs are all stuck there. Now this is going to seem like a process, but I promise you it'll work out. Now, what I want to do is put another piece of mint tape on the front, and that is going to secure all of the little in-between pieces of the alphabet. Then I peel the back piece off, make sure everything is stuck in place. We do not want anything moving at all. Those extra little pieces were others from the die. Then I put some double-sided adhesive sheets directly down on the back here, and this is going to make everything, all of the letters, sticky. So that's exactly what we want. Everything is stuck in place now, and those open gaps where the letters are sticky because they have the double-sided adhesive on the back of them. Now, and it means that we sort of don't have to replace anything back into place. We don't have to remember. We don't have to turn them around and around until they fit. Nothing moved in that whole process, which makes life very easy. Then I cut out 3 more of these. These do have some Stick It double-sided adhesive on the back of them. It's just a really nice thin adhesive that you can die cut with. So I stacked up 3 of these, and then the original one on top will make it 4 all together. So for this card, we've gone with pretty much the eclipse technique, where we're going to keep the pattern is going to be continuous, except for the words are going to stick out really nicely because they have all those extra layers underneath. Now, I didn't have the Stick It adhesive behind the top one, remember, so I did glue that one on, which is absolutely fine. And then when I come to putting all of this down, remember there is the double-sided tape there, so I can stick it in, and I don't have to fill in all those little gaps and everything because they were stuck there from the beginning of the process. So even just that looks really, really cool. I love the continuous stripe through the middle. It's very, very simple. Then, if you're never sure about lining things up, but you want to use foam tape to get dimension, don't be afraid to pop some liquid adhesive on the back of it. I just pop it on with my glue bottle and then use my finger to spread it around a little bit. And that way, I still get to have the dimension, but I can also slip and slide it around until it is perfectly in place. Then I'm going to add a few little clear rain droplets, and this is going to finish off a very simple but gorgeous happy birthday card. So that was really easy, and one way that we can use up our ink swiping. Now this one here was probably one of my absolute favorites. I really love this, and I'm going to use the Sunny Studio Gingham pattern paper. Now I had kind of the pinky one and the purpley one here because I was trying to pick up tones from what we had used in the actual thing here, the picture, but I just either would have worked perfectly well. I think either color is going to work well. They've kind of got pinks and purples in there. I'm going to trim this down a little bit, but then I decided that I would actually have the gingham piece of paper would be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it's going to cover the entire front of a card base. Then I'm just going to add a little bit of liquid glue, not too much. You do not want too much liquid glue here because you do not want any warping at all. This glue is pretty good for that. I don't tend to have too many problems because I'm using a heavyweight cardstock as my card base and not too much liquid glue. If you do have a problem with it, it's either that your card-based paper is too lightweight, or the glue that you are using has a high water content, and you probably either need to look at your glue, changing your glue, or changing your paper, or maybe both, or just stick to a dry adhesive, and that's going to work perfectly well too. So sometimes you just need to change things up, and sometimes some things work better for some people, than others. Now, I really did not want to take away from what we've created in the background here because I actually think it's stunning. So I didn't want to put a big sort of white circle, with a bit of vellum behind it and things to distract from the background. I really want to just see the background. So I want a big, bold sentiment to go in the center so that you can read the sentiment perfectly well, but that you can still see all of that gorgeous flower ink swiping that we've done in the background as well. So this one from Gina K's big birthday, this is going to meet the criteria. I'm just using some VersaMark Onyx black ink. This is a crisp, beautiful stamping ink. It's nice and dark and black and solid, stamping perfectly. So I'm going to pop this with a little bit of foam tape just for a bit of dimension. And as I mentioned, the background now is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And then I'm just going to pop down that card front. Now we all know that it is card making's worst kept secret that we use embellishments to hide all those little bits and pieces. So I am going to do exactly that, and any little bits of ink that I got that I don't particularly love, or that they just are not where I want them to be, then I will use some white Nuvo drops to cover those up. Just a few here and there, to cover up any little spots and to even things out. So just a little bit of decoration on there, but I really want that ink swiping to be the absolute sort of main thing you look at, other than seeing the happy birthday, of course. Right, we're moving on to the next one, and this one is gorgeous. I loved this background, and it is pretty solid. I'm going to cut it down just a little bit so it fits my needs for my card front. Then I have my A2 arches, nested arches set. This is from scrapbook.com, and I love this for something a little bit different. It's a little bit different sort of background shape than usual, and so I'm going to use this one today. I'm going to pick a sort of relatively small arch, I guess, in the scheme of things, and pop this straight in the middle. Now, I'm just eyeballing it. If you like things to be perfectly even, then absolutely go ahead and measure this up to make sure you've got it in the middle. But I'm pretty happy with eyeballing. Then I'm going to take a little makeup wedge. You can absolutely use a finger dauber. You could probably just use the ink pad itself. And I'm going to do a very light dusting of embossing ink. I am using VersaMark, but there are lots of different brands out there that are going to work. It is a very light dusting, but don't forget that whatever you do, you can always undo it with the paintbrush. At this point, I'm going to use some gold superfine embossing powder and go around the edges, and I could have used a anti-static powder bag. That might have helped, but I didn't get too much at all. I'm just going to adjust where I got a little too much ink and sort of push it back just a little bit, push back a little bit of that powder, but in general, I was pretty happy with that, and I didn't get too much embossing powder where I didn't want it to be because I had given these panels plenty of time to dry in between. Then I'm going to heat set that, and I do love this gold. It is a gorgeous gold. And as usual, as I said earlier, everything's linked down below. So if I forget to mention something, or if you're not sure about a product, then check it out down below. Otherwise, leave me a comment in the comment section down below, and I should be able to, answer your questions down there. Now, I wanted something really nice and subtle for the background here. So I picked this woodware. This is called Summer Picks. And I do love a couple of the leaves in here. They're absolutely gorgeous. So I'm going to use the VersaMark embossing ink again. And I'm just going to go around, and I don't need to fill in all of the background and make it absolutely perfectly well covered. But my plan was to just give it a little bit of interest, a little bit of something going on in the background. And at this point, I didn't know if I wanted to use white or clear embossing powder on the background. I thought white might be a little too distracting, and so I used clear. But now that I've done them, I think either would have worked perfectly fine, maybe even the white, so that it could be a little bit more bold. But what I do love is how subtle this is, and it does mean that it sort of creates just a shade fraction of the color. And of course, when you move it in the light, you can see that shiny embossing powder reflecting. So I don't know, maybe this worked out well. It's just a very light, delicate little bit of interest going on in the background. You can sort of barely see it there when I catch it and move it, but it was looking good. I was happy with this so far. Then I'm going to take the inside piece. Of course, this is where I'm going to stamp the sentiment. Now, in all honesty, I just go through my stamp sets and see what will fit the space that I have available. So for me, it was this birthday cheer mini from Gina, and sometimes it means I do have to change my plan a little bit. But sometimes it works out okay, and this one ended up working out okay. I definitely had to find a stamp that was going to work within that little space there. Because these are words, I am going to remember to use my anti-static powder bag there, just give it a light dusting. And with this, I am going to use the VersaMark stick embossing ink, and I have two sentiments here, one bigger and bold, and one much, much more delicate and fine. So I really do want to use a super fine embossing powder so that I can get really clear detail with those gorgeous little fine letters down the bottom. Otherwise, with the wrong embossing powder, this could end up more of a puddle situation, which sometimes is great, but not necessarily what we want in this case. So I'm going to use some white, super fine embossing powder, and these words come out crystal clear. So this is birthday wishes, happy birthday to you, and I was really, really happy with how this comes out once I have heat set this. It comes out very bright white. It stands out against that background perfectly. So everything is looking pretty good. Now, once I came to putting this together, I actually thought it was a little bit disjointed. I needed something to make it a little more cohesive. And so I'm going to add that gold, a little bit of border around the main panel as well. So I should have used my anti-static powder bag because of course it is going to stick to that embossing that I just did a little bit. But that's okay because where there's a will, there's a way. We can always solve problems, and I just need to use a little dry paintbrush. Make sure it's not wet, that's for sure. A little dry paintbrush to knock back any of the embossing powder that we didn't, that got where we didn't necessarily want it. So really quick and easy. It didn't bother me too much at all. I should learn from my lessons and remember the anti-static powder bag, that's for sure. So once I'd done this, I definitely felt like it went together a whole lot better and everything was sort of, much more well matched. And that's okay. We can sort of make it up as we go and change our minds as we go, and projects always evolve, particularly when I'm card making. I never have a plan in mind with where I'm going. So I'm going to pop all of these together. Now, I did cut one piece of white, a plain white arch as well, which I'm going to layer up here. I definitely have my little helper, and boy is he squeezing that glue bottle with all his might, and so we're getting a fair dollop of glue. I am going to smooth this out just a little bit. I couldn't help myself. Usually I don't like to correct the things that they do, but I did need to smooth this out just a tiny little bit. And he also helps me with some more gluing on the back, and again I'm going to need to smooth it out, which I feel terrible about doing, but that's okay. And I'm sorry, that's his head knocking the camera. He used to be so tiny when he sat on my knee and I crafted around him, and somehow children grow. His most favourite thing in the world is definitely still to sit on my knee to craft, but he's getting to an age where I find it difficult to see around him, so sometimes the option is just to go right beside Mama. But you can see his gluing here. He's definitely got some great hands for pressing that glue bottle. This glue bottle just needs a very delicate little touch to get a little bit of glue out. And so I just need to smooth it out just a tiny little bit, because this card here is going to go flat, nice and flat down. And then the next one, I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape so that it sticks up one more layer. So I hope that you have enjoyed today. I hope that you give ink swiping a go. Let me know in the comment section down below if you've tried this technique before. Let me know if you've tried the flowers or some leaves or some different sort of shapes with the ink swiping. I would love to know. If you'd like to support my channel, I have a link to the Buy Me a Coffee website down below if you would like to help me out. But other than that, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye.